when we're talking about curriculum, when we're talking about the framework of the dance, and you often hear this word tossed around a lot, that's evolution, right? When we're talking about evolution, evolution means that something is inherently changing. The structure of it is changing. The infrastructure, the skeleton of it is changing. This dance has not changed. Are there styling elements that have become popular, sometimes for a short period of time, sometimes for a long period of time? Yes. But those are not evolutionary changes. Most of the time, those are style elements that someone in particular did, someone else liked it, now you have a few people doing it. For instance, one of the things that irks me to no end, but I accept that it's something that people obviously like, and that's people hopping around like bunny rabbits. I personally don't like it, but it's not evolution. There have been people who've been doing that for the last 50 years. But does it make it right or wrong? Not necessarily. It all depends on where you are, because in some circles, it's frowned upon. In other circles, it works. But that also says that you understand different elements of the dance, i.e. style. Do you know what bopping is? Do you know what new bop is? Do you know what stepping is? It's important to know where you are, what music is being played, and what parts of the dance are feasible in that particular environment. So when we talk about things shifting, what I learned from my instructor hasn't changed. Now, granted, when I first learned, I learned on the bop step, which means I learned it off time, off the beat. Now, one of the things I also learned that was indicative of a certain group of the community, not the entire group. And so then I learned to make that adjustment. It wasn't a very big adjustment, but it was an adjustment that was needed depending on where I was dancing. So I needed to understand the dynamics. The dance, the core, the infrastructure of the dance did not change. Only the nuances changed. So it was important to know the nuances and how those things work together, as opposed to saying this is something that's etched in stone, and if it changes, you're doing it wrong, right? So it's important that we understand what evolution is. We understand what frameworks are at play, what styles are at play, and how that impacts what's going on in the room. Those are things that aren't generally taught in today's classes. I would venture to say most classes that were created after 1998 didn't teach any of those things, because a lot of those things was knowledge and gems, if you would, that were given by the older dancers, that this new influx of ambassadors of the dance didn't share, simply because they didn't have that information in whole. So a lot of that information aren't things that you would normally see or hear, simply because people didn't have the information to give. And some people nowadays hear old dancers complain about things or say things, and they say, well, if it's so important, why don't you start a class? So I've never heard you saying anything. The reality is, for many years, they did say things and they were ignored. But those things stayed in one place. It was all in Chicago. Now that a lot of that ideology and missing information is hampering the execution and performance of the dance, they're saying more. But there are different tools. There's different technology that impacts all of that. There was no, when I started teaching, or even when I started dancing, there were no cell phones. There were no camera phones, videos. There weren't laptops, and even when those things first came around, Black people didn't have them. So none of those things were tools that most people had access to. So we're dealing in a totally different environment. And it's not that those people did not want to share that information. A lot of them were shunned because once people gained popularity without having those things, they weren't interested in having them. And they felt like as long as the people that they were teaching weren't asking or didn't know that those things were missing, that it really didn't matter. So having that information as far as foundation, is that important? I believe so for every instructor, whether you're in Chicago or whether you're somewhere else. I don't think that there should be a difference in the level of understanding or insight for instructors teaching the dance. Does that mean that you have to be a historian? No, it doesn't. You don't need to know where every party started, who everyone is, and those types of things. That's history, yes, but it's not necessary for you to understand the dynamics of the dance. And so what's important for instructors to learn at this particular point is what are the dynamics for effectively executing the dance in such a way that is respectful of the framework, regardless of what style of the dance it is, but also understand that there are different styles. And it's not old school and new school, that there are legitimate names for different things. And those are things that instructors should know so that they can pass that part of historical structure, if you will, of what the dances are and are not. So am I still using what Calvin gave me? Yes. Did I always adhere to the line? No. But I also was privileged to have the old heads stick with me this almost 30 years teaching this dance and guiding me and sometimes chiding me, chastising me, and sometimes virtual whoopings about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and how I could be more effective. Everyone didn't have that, or a lot of people weren't interested in that. And so it was rejected by a lot of people. So it really all depends on the journey of the instructor. But what we're trying to do in Budland is give a larger group of instructors who are interested, who want to be that effective, who want to be connected throughout the different eras and be able to attend any party, be able to dance to any type of music at a party. And so, and not use the excuse, oh, that's not my style, or I can't relate. If you can't relate, then you don't understand the entirety of what this dance community is about. And everyone brought into it should understand more than just one part.